The closer you get to light, the greater your shadow becomes. Silver Knights and Darkwraiths are no exception. In this video, we'll be analyzing data I pulled directly from the game's files to find out who would win in an all-out team deathmatch. We'll take a look at each enemy's strengths and weaknesses in the matchup, as well as their movesets. I simulated 100 of these battles, and at the end of this video, we'll be watching the most exciting ones from that collection. Without any further ado, let's begin. Before Lord Gwyn departed to link the first flame and extend the Age of Fire, he split his knights into two groups. Those he left behind are known as the Silver Knights, and they swore an oath to protect the now-forsaken capital of Armour Londo and its royal family inside. Of those they protected, it was the goddess Guinevere who blessed the Silver Knights with protection prayers, and these blessings gave them respectable defenses as a whole. Let's take a look at their stats. Each Silver Knight has 998 HP on the first playthrough, scaling up to 1811 by New Game Plus 7, which is when the scaling ends. They have a decent amount of poise at 35, which allows them to take a few attacks before staggering, but it's nothing to write home about. Their absorption, or percentage-based damage reduction, is as follows, making them most susceptible to magic and dark type damage. This isn't really surprising at all, since most knight-like enemies are actually weak to magic, and it only makes sense from a lore perspective that the Silver Knights are weak to dark, given that Lord Gwyn gave his own life to prevent the Age of Darkness. Physically, they're most weak to strike, thrust, and slash. Standard damage isn't as effective, since they actually do have a flat damage reduction against that type. With absorption out of the way, let's take a quick look at their resistances. Given that they are Knights of the Flame, they are most susceptible to the Frost status effect, and only sport passable resistances to poison, toxic, and bleed. None of these resistances for either enemy will come into play during the match. Offensively, Silver Knights had quite the reputation. Statues celebrating their strength can be found throughout the capital, and their skills speak for themselves. They're talented with various forms of weaponry such as great bows, spears, and swords. And the ones with great bows will switch to swords or spears when you get close, making them very dangerous at all ranges. Each knight is capable of dealing standard, thrust, strike, and lightning-type damage. They can block attacks with their shields and also use them to crush guards. Their battle technique relies on the mastery of its body weight to deliver decisive, finishing blows to the opponent. As a result, many of their attacks are slow. But what they lack in speed, they make up for in power. If a Silver Knight manages to land its powerful lightning attack, it can rip through the opponent's poise and incapacitate them for a short period of time, temporarily taking them out of the fight. All things considered, these Knights of the Flame will use every ounce of strength they have to see that their concord is kept. They are not to be taken lightly. Once honorable knights, these followers of the primordial serpent, Karth, were seduced by the darkness. When Lord Gwyn learned of their betrayal, he sacrificed their home of New Londo and flooded everyone inside, killing most of its citizens, and trapping them within the abyss. But some Darkwraiths absolutely refused to die, and still roam Lordran to this day in pursuit of their ultimate goal: to feed the dark soul with humanity, and bring about the Age of Darkness. A Darkwraith's tenacity is matched only by its durability, having over twice as much poise as the Silver Knight. This means that they can take about twice as many attacks without staggering. To complement this, their HP is massive at max new game difficulty, clocking in at 2034. As former knights, their base defenses are nearly identical to the Silver Knights, sharing the same flat 100 damage reductions. However, their absorption is where things will start to differ. The Darkwraith is slightly more resistant to slash and strike and is even more resistant to lightning than the Silver Knight is. Despite this, lightning is still the damage type that they are most weak to. As a knight-like enemy, The fact that they are so resistant to magic is exceptionally rare and worth pointing out. Lastly, and perhaps most obviously, they are most resistant to dark. As far as status effects go, they are completely immune to toxic and poison and fairly resistant to bleed and frost. To round out their defensive capabilities, the Dark Hand, an ancient artifact gifted to them by Karth, doubles as a special shield with modest stability that it can use to block attacks and retaliate with attacks of its own. Let's take a look at their moveset. Darkwraiths are the originators of a very unique sword technique inspired by their broad darksword blades. They combine relentless offensive pressure with their very high poise and HP to overwhelm the opponent, making them block. Once they do, they'll go in for the grab. If the grab connects, then the opponent will take dark-type damage. The one downside to this move is that the opponent must be human in order for the grab to be successful. In addition to dark, these wraiths are also capable of dealing standard and thrust-type damage and will even attempt to kick blocking opponents to bypass their guard. Darkwraiths are an unrelenting force and will stop at nothing to achieve their goal, even if it means ripping the very humanity out of anyone who stands in their way. Let's see who comes out on top. In the end, Silver Knights won 57 out of the 101 battles that I simulated. Their victory was largely the result of their fearsome greatbows. If the Darkwraiths could not close the distance, then the battle was practically over. This, combined with the fact that Silver Knights are hollow and not human, meant that the Darkwraiths were unable to use the Dark Hand to its fullest potential. Unfortunately, their poise also paled in comparison to the Silver Knights' lightning attacks, which shattered their guards and hit them super effectively. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.